Thank you for joining me for another episode of Thursday Hang. Welcome, and if you're not familiar with the Thursday Hang, it comes out every Thursday evening, and we get to talk about all kinds of different topics for guitar, whether it's having to do with guitar theory, maybe music theory, stuff on rhythm, maybe it's the philosophy of just playing guitar and playing gigs and being a musician. I try to cover it all on the Thursday Hang, so thanks for joining me this week, and I hope you'll join me for the next upcoming episodes in the weeks ahead. Now this time around, what we're going to do is check out an idea called caged theory. Now if you're not familiar with the caged neck theory, it's a really important one because it blends over to how octave concepts operate on the guitar. This helps you understand where notes are, all that kind of good stuff. But what I want to do is focus on the benefits that come from understanding this idea, especially for learning note locations through octave patterns all across the fretboard. So we're going to get things started by learning what caged theory is, how to play and memorize this theory, and we're going to get going on it by way of the first caged theory octave idea on the neck, which is going to be centered here for us in this lesson on a C. So what we're doing is we're taking the 5th string C, right there on the 3rd fret, and we're playing it with this C up here on the 1st fret, 2nd string. Now, those C notes are going to be the very start of everything. You can think of them associated to the C major chord. Now, the reason why we're going to associate it to the C major chord is because we're going to go through other notes of the word caged, which are going to be A, G, E, and D, and we're going to use those chords from the open position at first to form their octave templates. So let's get going into the next chord, which is A. So on the A, we're going to have a low open A 5th string, and then an A right there on the 2nd fret of 3rd string. The next chord we're going to look at is G, and we're going to focus on the G notes, of course, on that one. We've got a G down below on the 3rd fret of 6th string, G open 3rd string, and another G way up top here on the 1st string, 3rd fret. So those are the 3 G notes that we're focusing on for the G. For the E in the word caged, we're going for open 6th string E, the E found here on the 2nd fret of the 4th string, and then open high 1st string E. Those are the notes of E found from our E major open chord in that open position. And the last one we're going to be looking at is D. You probably guessed it's a D chord, and we're focused on the D open 4th string as well as this D right here on the 3rd fret of 2nd string. All right, so we have gone through 5 chords. We've gone through C, A, G, E, and D. Now, from those 5 chords, we also separated their individual notes and looked at those notes as an octave template. Now, what I want to do with you on this is think about going just from one of those tones. We're just going to use one of them, and the note we're going to go with is C, from the C chord. So the C octave template's coming up on the screen right now. You're seeing here, we're going all across the neck with those C notes, all along the guitar fretboard. Now, across the neck, if we start planning those C note layouts, what we wind up with is 5 octave patterns. There's an octave for C here in 1st fret. There's another octave for the C in 3rd. There's another octave of C we can do in 5th. There's a 2 octave actually. And as well, we can do it in 8th with a 2 octave. And then there's that final one off the 10th fret of 4th string of C that's going up to the high 13th fret 2nd string C. So what we now have found out is we can take one of these octave shapes and just float it right across the whole guitar neck off of the same strings, and we could do that for all the other notes in caged, and I would highly recommend you start there. So that means we could go over to the A, and in the A chord, remember, we've got an A note off of the open 5th string A, another A right here on that 2nd fret, and then you can plot in the same way right across your guitar fretboard using all those A notes until you wind up basically where you started again from that shape of A, but now in 12th fret instead of open position. So what I think is a really good thing to do, and this is what I was taught when I first learned about this theory, is instead of assigning and only looking at it in terms of the letters C, A, G, E, D, which of course relate to the octave template of those notes which are found in a C chord, an A chord, a G chord, E chord, D chord, what you can do instead is look at those in terms of a numbering system, and it works just as good, and we would wind up with 5 templates, obviously. Now let's go back to that C chord. We would have the C major giving us an octave template from 5th string to 2nd string, and we're going to call that shape number 1 or pattern number 1. So we got pattern 1. For the A, because it's the 2nd letter, we're going to call it pattern number 2. But of course, we're taking that shape up here in 3rd position to maintain a C. For the C, we're going to move up and we're going to use this G layout that we had from the G chord, right? The same locations on the string sets. And we're going to call that pattern number 3. Then we're going to move forward and we're going to do an 8th position, that C shape that is a template built out of E major, and we're going to do that instead up at 8th, and now we're going to call that pattern number 4. And then obviously the D, moving that all the way up the neck off of a C, is going to give us a pattern template number of 5. So now we've got pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 3, pattern 4, pattern 5. And of course, we could keep going back to pattern 1, and it all loops in a cycle. So now what you have essentially done is you've taken those 5 letters of C, A, G, E, D, assigned numbers to them, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and those are now octave pattern templates that you can take to any note that you want. Let's go back to A and look at that once more. Now with the A shape, remember, we called it pattern 2 because it's the 2nd letter in the caged layout of letter names. So now we could go from pattern 2A to pattern 3A, pattern 4A, pattern 5, pattern 1, and then back to pattern 2. So we can keep going in the cycle, but now because we're just using the same letter name, we can just scoot across the entire guitar fretboard with our numbering system, and we've got it taken care of. We can do the same thing with G if we go to the G chord. Remember, it's the 3rd letter in the word caged, so we can go pattern number 3 as its octave numbering. So pattern 3 would go to pattern 4, to pattern 5, to pattern 1, to pattern 2, and back to pattern 3 once again. We could do it with E. Remember, E is the 4th letter in the word caged, so that would be pattern 4, and we'd have E, pattern 4, pattern 5, pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 3, and pattern 4 again up an octave. See how easy this is? Let's do it with D just to wrap up the whole cycle. So D, remember, 4th or 5th letter, pardon me, in the caged word. So we've got D as pattern 5, and then we would move up into pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 3, pattern 4, pattern 5 again. So it's as simple as that. All you need to do is go through all of the notes possible on the guitar fretboard, find your lowest possible number. Like let's say, I don't know, just pick anything. You could pick like F sharp. So if you're on F sharp, the lowest possible shape you could do with that is a pattern 4. So then you would just be moving forward from there. F sharp pattern 4 would move to F sharp pattern 5, to pattern 1, to pattern 2, to pattern 3. Just as simple as that. It's really easy to get it down if you convert those letters that are in the word cage, the 5 letters, into just calling them as octave template numbers of 1 through 5. And then you begin assigning them and doing the kind of exercise work that I just showed you. If you really want to put it into a real workout, what you could even do is turn a metronome on and have that metronome ticking away in the background, and then just kind of jump each of the octave shapes along and then just switch over to other notes. You know, you could do, we just did F sharp, you could do B flat, you know, you could do C sharp, you could just keep going through other tones. You know, if you haven't done B, you could do B, and you know, maybe you could do 5 letters a day, but it won't take you long to really get the neck down and master this. And the cool thing is, each one of these octave templates can also work as a format for scales, for chords, for arpeggios, for areas you're going to do licks, pentatonic scales, like, you know, the most famous pentatonic scale we've got. Everybody pretty much knows that shape. That would be referred to as a pattern 4 because the A template for it in that area because I'm playing it in A. I'm playing it off the 5th fret of the 6th string. I'm getting the template setup that is familiar to us as an E setup. And you just have to think in terms of where those string sets are that the notes are located. The E chord for our E is located off of the 6th string open. We've got 4th string and then 1st string open. So it's 6th string, 4th string, and 1st string. If we go up to the A where I just played that pentatonic, I'd have 6th string, 4th string, 1st string. And it's just as simple as that. So you can get a lot of mileage out of this. You can start understanding your arpeggios, your chords, your pentatonics, your scale shapes, your modes. It's endless, basically, on how this can operate. Plus, it's a fantastic way to get to know where every single note is located across the guitar fingerboard. So anyway, guys, I wanted to just run through that concept of how cage theory works, a great way to represent it with these numbering systems of patterns on the neck. And you can now go on from there, study it more, and get more involved with it. Of course, the courses that I use at creativeguitarstudio.com all follow this method. So obviously we've got chords that are representing for pattern 1 through 5. We've got, scale layouts that I show you in those courses that are representing for, the pattern 1 through 5. And same thing for arpeggios and the pentatonics, and everything gets related to that. You can even study your intervals using this. It's kind of, like I said, endless for you. So thank you very much for joining me for this week's Thursday Hang. If you're watching this perhaps on YouTube or on the free side of my Patreon, you want to keep in mind that you can get the handout for this lesson if you just simply join Patreon as the lowest tier at $3 a month, and you will get this handout that'll explain this in a little bit more in-depth way. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining me. If you need a little bit extra help with the concept of your guitar and all that, I do have a donations run that I do every month, and you can just tap into that by way of the link that you see showing up at the bottom of the screen right now. With a donation of as little as $5, you will receive a copy of our Handouts Collection ebook, which is a 100-page ebook covering a ton of fantastic information that builds the foundation of every guitar player's playing. So thank you very much for joining me, and I'll catch up with you next week for another edition of the Thursday Hang. Bye for now. With a free membership, you'll be able to access all the free lesson material, including a collection of 6 years of YouTube archives, where there are hundreds of videos, PDF handouts, and MP3 jam tracks. Plus, with a free membership, you'll gain access to the Quick Licks program, a 30-lesson course covering guitar licks in all playing styles across all types of scales and arpeggios. When you sign up for a paid membership, you'll get access to my core curriculum, including my beginner, intermediate, and advanced guitar programs. Plus, there's also my elective courses on the site, like acoustic guitar, guitar technique, guitar soloing, ear training, music reading, and many others. Go check it out. You're going to love it. The website is creativeguitarstudio.com.